Awesome. I say we get started. James, you ready?
Sounds good.
Great. Thanks everybody for attending and for watching this webinar. Of course, the topic of AI may be the hottest topic amongst all business topics that currently exist. We get asked about it on a regular basis. I attended a conference 2 weeks ago where this was the sole topic of conversation. What you may not know is there's been an abundance of research around this topic that we want to cover and share today. And there, of course, has generated a lot of angst with marketers of, oh my goodness, what do I do about this? Is AI about to take over marketing? Well, if you only have time for the intro of this, we'll leave you with this takeaway. It's like the Mark Twain quote, rumors of my demise have been greatly exaggerated. That is very true when it comes to AI. It does a lot of things exceptionally well. It is going to make us all much more productive and much better at our jobs. But marketing, as a human-driven enterprise, is here to stay, and the research behind that is abundantly clear. With that framing, let's dive in a little bit. So, my name is Jake McKenzie. I'm the president and CEO of the Intermark Group. We're the nation's largest psychology-driven marketing firm. And with me today is Dr. James McFarland, behavioral scientist, PhD in psychology, who also teaches psychology at the university level. Welcome, James.
Hey, thanks, Jake. Good to be here.
So today we're going to talk about psychology. Of course, Intermark is the nation's largest psychology-driven marketing firm, and we spend a lot of time organizing research around human behavior, both what people currently think as well as how to affect it. And so we're going to take that approach today and be a very research-driven approach. So let's start with the general topic of what AI does well, because it does do a lot of things well. So three broad categories we've identified from the research: personalization, prediction, and optimization. So when we look at the data around this of what's been tracked, we see that it does really great in terms of driving better outcomes when used in these key areas. So it can do things faster and more iteratively than a lot of humans do, including personalization, optimizing around preference and click-through rates, and rapidly delivering mass personalized marketing. And all of these things we need to be leveraging, but I suspect most of us already are because this has been available to us for the last several years, and we've all seen these sort of outcomes. But let's review some of these individually. So we'll start with this concept of personalization at scale. James, you found this example from Starbucks, which I love. It's a great example of how the Starbucks app is using mass personalization to deliver a more personalized experience to us on an individualized basis.
Exactly. It can track people's phones. It knows where you're at. It even knows what the weather's like where you're at. So it knows if you're in the mood for something iced or maybe something really hot. And I couldn't get the exact numbers on it, but I think it's working well for them.
Yeah. So being able to tell what the weather's going on as well as where you are so it can optimize those personalized recommendations is that nice balance between feeling too intrusive, but also feeling customized to what I like and increases that affinity for usage. But Starbucks is far from being the only folks who have leveraged a tool like this. The folks over at Sephora have been leveraging AR along with AI to deliver a very personalized experience when it comes to recommendations among products. The headline here for us is that level of personalization and customization has led to a 25% sales increase amongst people who use this application. Now, within the world of marketing, you can get a 25% sales lift off of something. It is a grand slam home run. I think it's a great example of that personalization at scale of taking information and using AI to make us more closely related to the products and services in a recommendation space. And that's a sweet spot for AI. Uh, Came across another one, Michael's. Michael's is doing a lot of one-to-one communications. And frankly, I think most of the clients who we're working with are doing a lot of one-to-one communications and leveraging AI for this. But they published their data after they had used AI to do that mass customization. So they're personalizing across not just things like customer name, which we've been doing for a while, and birthdays and anniversaries, but also your location, your purchase history, and using that to make individualized outcomes for those email. They got a 25% lift in their performance. Again, huge results. And that lets us know we as humans want to feel that closer to one-to-one marketing, and AI is unlocking that for us. But you also came across a use of theirs in the social space that had some good outcomes.
Exactly. Even the short messaging platform, we even saw a better increase, or they saw a better increase, I think of nearly 41%. So yeah, just little details like the time of day, like good morning versus good evening, just those small little cues that, oh wow, do they actually know what's going on in my life? Huge. It makes a big difference. And in this case, a 41% increase in the click-through rate.
And I think a key here is balancing that personalization, but without feeling intrusive, because we
Right.
want to know that it's customized for me, but without feeling like it gets into the creepy space of, wait, how do you know so much? And the folks who are using AI well have done those things to divine what's in bounds and out of bounds of what we know about you and what we don't. Another great place that AI is delivering tremendous results is in the concept of prediction. So we use Amazon as the example here because we're all familiar with Amazon. They have built an entire business model around making recommendations to us. It started with this concept of social proof, and they've applied AI to use your prior behavior to make stronger recommendations, and it's working out spectacularly well for them. Because again, we love that concept of personalization and suggestions of what ought to be relevant to us, because system one that we all use to make decisions is looking for those shortcuts, the reasons to not think. So, 13% lift in sales conversion rates when you get AI-driven recommendations that are based off of prediction model. This is a tenfold increase off of the industry standards where they were using just typical recommendations that were non-personalized or non-AI driven. So again, a great example of where AI is giving a substantial lift to performance in the personalization space. The last space is for optimization. Now, optimization we often refer to as the testing component of marketing, like, hey, let's run an A/B test, or let's try different variations. And AI can just iterate much faster than humans possibly can. And you found this great study from Cornell that talks about that.
Exactly. So they were looking at things like prediction and personalization. And yeah, they're across the board, they found actually 38% increase in engagement. So those things were great. But not to mention, then it was a 26% reduction in costs. So that's where the optimization comes in. It can do these things better than we can, and it do them much faster and much cheaper. So yeah, it's a win-win.
Yeah, and that is, of course, the great promise of AI. Take the repetitive tasks that don't require a lot of thinking, do those things. And we're seeing not only does it work better, but it's driving costs down. And so these are some great places where AI does perform well. And now let's look at the flip side of that. AI does those things really well, but it's been overpromised to us of what it's going to be able to do. And there are a number of things that we're getting a lot of research to indicate where it doesn't do well. So the places in summary where AI struggles in understanding really how humans think and behave is the short version of it. So it doesn't get emotion in the way that we think about things. And it doesn't understand that we use emotionally driven decision making. It doesn't understand nuance and humor and often lacks that larger context, even when you are serving it that context. Because AI, if you will, is an average of what the internet thinks about things, at least that most LLMs. And so when you ask it a question, it's going and kind of surveying and seeing what the average of thinking is around a topic and serving that back up to you. So that individualized context is often getting lost. And what makes us humans, it's still really struggling with. Will it get there one day? Maybe, but for now, it's a long way away. So let's dig into a little bit into some of these examples that I think are pretty profound. Let's start with AI as replacing customer service. Um, You've probably seen and felt this yourself, where you've tried using a chat bot, tried using an AI function on a phone system to be super frustrated. Well, what we are seeing now is an overwhelming negative reaction to the overuse of these things. They're trying to cut out the humans from the equation, but we're also seeing people exploit them to really highlight the security vulnerabilities, to really highlight the holes in the system. And this is a good one to really illustrate how frustrated they became in trying to use a chat bot. Another one that made the rounds famously, a gentleman convinced an online agent to sell him a brand new truck for $1. Got a lot of coverage. So what happened? Well, immediately everybody else went and did it as well.
Yeah,
Now,
I wish I jumped on that. Yeah.
no, right? And courts have found that when you engage an AI agent, it and you treat it like a human agent, that they are legally binding. They actually took this case to court. I have not seen the resolution of this case, but I did see the resolution in other cases where courts said that you are held accountable for the negotiation led by the AI because you're putting it out to negotiate in the other direction. So this not only was a programming error, of course, that it should have been restricted from this, but it really illustrates the whole, that it's just not ready for some of these engagements. Another example that made a lot of headway overseas was Taco Bell's AI allowing somebody to accidentally order 18,000 waters. They eventually turned off the AI ordering system because this and other issues were really frustrating customers, raising some negative PR, and overall overpromise for what it was actually able to do, which is a classic case of being able to set expectations that we can't deliver again. We're also seeing some negative publicity around AI doing some kind of nefarious activities. In this case, they're highlighting where it was blackmailing and threatening people and doing things that kind of had tones that were not corporate appropriate. Again, this really just highlights these large areas where it's not quite there yet in terms of regular complex customer interaction. And what we see is that this overall level of issues with AI, we hate. All of us that have engaged with an AI agent, whether in the online space or chatbots or on a phone system, we find it super frustrating. That's not surprising. And it's also not surprising that we have a strong preference for humans. In fact, one of the number one responses when somebody gets into the phone support logic monster is that we all ask for a human, and that is one of the most common responses. And it is programmed to not give you one unless you increase your frustration level enough, which is an interesting concept of how we're treating our customers.
Main menu.
Okay, robot.
Press 1. I'm sorry. 0 is not an option.
Representative?
Please say the name of your second pet.
Rocknar.
Incorrect. Your call is important to us. We'll be with you shortly.
Hello?
Oh, okay, good. Yes. Hello, Daniel.
Can you hold, please?
No, please.
Main menu.
Calling customer service is the worst, so T-Mobile just made it better. No bots, no bouncing, no BS.
I love you guys.
We get that a lot.
I love the spot. When we were looking, James, you actually found a number of spots with the same theme. Yeah. And it really highlights how angry America is getting at the implementation of this technology and how it has become a competitive advantage to still have humans to answer the phone, to still have humans on the other side of the chat feature. And it's becoming a point of differentiation. It's a way to elevate your brand, to dig in, to not do the AI functions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So,
well, this study, it's fascinating because most people, like, they're frustrated, but I think this survey actually found that 1 in 5 people say there's zero benefit. They just no. It's like a lot of people are frustrated, a lot of people prefer humans, but 1 in 5 actually say, no, I just don't want any part of it.
yeah, which is a really shocking percentage, and it lets us know that we have steered into it a little bit too hard. All right, so let's take it and apply it more in the marketing space. And so we ask the question, does it work? Can you produce creative concepts using AI? And the answer is not really. Now, obviously you can, but what we are finding from third-party research is it's perceived as less authentic, and there's a body of research indicating that it works far less well than human-produced content, which is an aha to folks. I've heard it said that if you want creative from AI, it's good unless you are actually creative. So this study really highlights that. And the specific gap is it doesn't really get humans. It doesn't really get emotions and how to engage with folks. So we'll start by how humans react to AI-generated content. So 60% of folks felt that there ought to be laws mandating a labeling of AI-generated content and AI-generated ads. Now, part of this goes to human preference for humans and not to be dealing with a robot. And you may say, well, hey, how are they ever going to know? Let's dig into that concept a little bit further. So if they are aware that something is AI-generated, they have a much stronger likelihood to purchase if it is human-generated.
Right. Exactly. Just having an AI label alone dropped the people's intent to purchase by 30%. Simply having that out there, yeah.
And so, we don't know where US law is going to go or even the state regulations, but if they mandated AI labeling of content, that label alone would significantly hurt performance of the creative assets if nothing else changed. But there are places where AI is really, really good, such as when it is very objective or data driven. So, for instance, you can see this example where they're letting you know, like, hey, these are bestsellers, or hey, these are sales trends, things where we're delivering objective data. People have no problem with that. In fact, they really like it, and it actually drives up outcomes. So, when we talk about AI generated creative, context is really important here, right, James?
Exactly. It's a really, really good point. We have to emphasize that. It's not that people hate AI. They just want AI used for the things that they think it should be used for. And that's what's going on here.
Yeah. Take that a step further. We look at something that we're all familiar with, going to the doctor, and we see that there is a strong preference for humans. When given the option of dealing with a human that is less good at their job or dealing with an AI that's better at their job, we see that over half the people choose to work with the human, even knowing that the AI is going to be better at those things. Crazy data point, I think.
Right. It just struck me. Oftentimes I tell my class that there's really no difference between imagination and memory. It's all chemical signals in the brain. And I think that's the issue with AI. For it, there's no imagination, memory, same thing. It doesn't really matter if you can jump 1,000 feet or 2 feet. It's the same thing. But humans get that because memory, same thing. That's what memory is. Humans have memory. We've tried that. We've tried to jump 3 feet. We can't jump 300 feet. And so we have reality constantly bumping into us. And so we trust in the human who also has reality bumping into them to kind of give us that feedback. AI doesn't have reality to kind of convince them or to tell them what is real or not.
So humans have this bias against AI. Now, will that lessen over time? Probably. It becomes more ubiquitous, but that's where we are today, and it applies to advertising as well. But we also see that it's not good at conveying things that are fundamentally human. And again, there's been some great research around that concept. So very specifically, it's being called out of limiting the emotional connection with customers in essence. And then got a great example of that, of where human generated storytelling really does a much better job of connecting.
What the world needs now is love, sweet love. It's the only thing that there's just too little of. What the world needs now is love, sweet love. What the world needs now is love, sweet love. It's the only thing that there's just too little of. What the world needs now is love, sweet love. No, not just for some, but for everyone.
Love that ad. Such a powerful emotional connection. You can tell not just the story is written by somebody that really understands human emotion, but the direction, the scenes chosen, even the notion of how his voice escalates once he begins singing and kind of has a mild change is a great pivot point that understands the nuance of human emotion. We're just not getting that from AI. Will it get there one day? Maybe, but I think we're a long way from that just because of the base of how AI approaches things. So it's a great example of that gap in storytelling, that gap in really understanding human emotions that can take an ad from being an ad to an effective ad that connects with people. And we know this is super important because if you've watched any of our content, you know that humans don't make rational decisions. We don't respond well to purely rational ads. We respond well to emotion and emotionally driven things because of our system one decision making, right, James?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Decades of research now going back back to the 90s. Actually, one of the first papers on it, a Harvard professor said 95% of all of our decisions subconscious. I mean, they're kind of below the surface, and that's what propelling us to. And then we can see that across the board. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, we know that, but we also know that it gets into more nuanced things as well, such as when we're better at telling stories versus just using data-driven pieces. And we know that AI doesn't do a great job at that storytelling, at making things strongly emotional that connects with people. And we can see this in performance outcomes that literally creative works better when it is driven by humans and are able to inject the psychology into the work so that it gets better outcomes.
Yeah, I love this experiment. So they actually they introduced this fellow. They said, "Oh, this guy's name's Baker," to a group of people, and then they give him a little task to be involved with. And they asked him a little later, "Well, what was that guy's name or what word to associate?" And they couldn't really remember. But in another group, they said, "This guy is a baker," and the exact same thing followed. And then 20 minutes later, "Hey, what's that dude guy do for a living?" He's a baker. It's just so much easier to remember stories. We're programmed, we're wired for that. Stories, greater recall, greater persuasion too. That's what some of the data shows, is that stories we just find them much, much more persuasive. And so again, it's that emotional aspect that kind of gets us to bite. We still like our rational reasons. Don't leave those out, but it is emotion that gets us going.
That's right. And we also have a preference for novel
Mm,
information. And that's one of those gaps where AI really struggles because it is using kind of an average of things. Of something has already existed, it's good at reproducing it and putting it forward. So it will retell stories that it's familiar with, but telling something new and novel, really digging into that human emotion, it struggles with, and it shows up in those outcomes. Now, you may say, Jake, show me. Well, they have run controlled studies to evaluate that very thing, even down to performance ads, pay-per-click ads. And we see that in a controlled study where they allowed AI to generate content and human written ads, the human written ads perform dramatically better than the AI driven ads. Now, of course, the AI ads probably going to be cheaper. You don't have a human involved, but at the end of the day, the cost per click was north of 20% cheaper. And when you're spending any amount of money at all, that quickly will eat up any efficiencies that you got in saving money on producing ads. So just humans are better at really understanding what's going on. That doesn't mean the optimization behind it is better done with a human. And finding that balance of having a human that really understands the way humans think and talk and act along with AI to do some of the optimizations, that's where the sweet spot's going to be. And this is really important because you understand how humans make decisions. It is number one, number two, and number three are emotional driven decisions. We need the rational pieces of those decisions, but often we're using it to rationalize after the fact as opposed to the front end of things. And AI is great at the rational piece of this. And that's also where humans expect AI to give information like, hey, tell me when there's a sale as an inventory piece or something that fits my shopping profile, something that's objective based. We expect and want those things, but that's not how we're selecting when we have competitive options. And that's an important distinction in where AI thrives. And just the punchline here, as long as humans are ruled by emotion, not reason in terms of making our decision, then humans are still going to have a place in the marketing journey.
great.
All right, let's take a look at a whole new area. We have probably done more consumer market research in the last few years than we did in the couple of years prior, where we're getting to do a lot more of that. And we'll get a lot of questions on, well, where does AI fit into this space? So we'll start with this. Again, this has been a well-researched area. There have been a number of peer-reviewed studies on how effective AI is at reproducing human research. So survey work, customer intercepts, et cetera. And what we find is that it does okay job, and there's a gap in how well it does. So the summary here is when we're asking it to reproduce a piece of research that's already been done, it's really great. It will say, hey, yeah, I predict that we're going to get the same outcomes because most research, if it's well structured, has a strong reproducibility. But if we ask it a novel question that's not been asked before, it's really poor at predicting those outcomes. Now, when you think about how an LLM is structured, that makes a lot of sense. It's looking at the information that exists on the internet and serves it back up to this in a condensed format. So if a research has been done before, it can serve that back up and tell you this is the likely outcome. But when it's novel, it doesn't do a great job at predicting outcomes. So the question for you as you're doing research is, am I asking a new question? Is this something that hasn't been asked before or a variation thereof? You probably still need to lean into doing some initial research as opposed to relying on AI. One great example of this, at where humans are far superior, is one of the best ways to predict human behavior is allowing other humans to wager on that behavior. Now, aside from the peer-reviewed studies, you might recall back after 9/11, the CIA actually developed the most effective methodology at predicting where the next terrorist attack was going to be. It was an online wagering market where people could go in and wager where and what the next terrorist attack would be. Turns out humans are really, really good at this when we have to put money on the line. We're really good at predicting other people's behavior. Now, of course, the CIA had to shut this down after the press got wind of it, and it kind of had a bad flavor in the press, and it had a bad look that they were allowing people to bet on terrorist activity. Even though it was super effective, they shut it down and didn't move forward. But what we are seeing is these wagering markets exploding online, and they have a much higher predictive value than most people do about their own behavior. So it's a great way at getting information. Thus, it has implications for even how we ask people information out of a survey. So an example, James, that you came up with, if I wanted to know how likely people are to cheat, and if I asked them this question, have you ever cheated on a test? What's likely to happen?
Yeah, maybe 1 out of 10 people will say, "Oh yeah, yeah, yeah."
Yeah, of course. I don't cheat. Of course I don't cheat. What would that say about me? But if you ask them a similar question to ask to predict other people's likelihood to cheat, and we change that, we get different outcomes.
Exactly. Yeah. The research shows that all of a sudden it switches to, all of a sudden, if you ask this question, then now it's 4 out of 10 or 5 out of 10, almost 50% of people. So I think about 50% of my peers actually cheat.
Yeah.
But this actually matches up with the actual data. So
Humans are really good at predicting other humans' behavior, but not our own behavior. Because going back to what we talked about earlier, we have these own biases about what it says about me and how I make decisions. Because we're blind to our own decision making. That's one of the key principles of that system one decision making. We don't know that it occurs, and we're blind to it occurring. So viewing our own behavior, we're not good at it, but we're often better at predicting other people's behavior because we've watched them. We're aware that they have these logical fallacies, and we remove a lot of the self biases. And that has pretty significant implications for survey work. It means that when we are talking to people and trying to get information out of them, we've got to understand some of these biases, both in how they're going to self-perceive, but their likelihood to predict other people's outcomes. So when we are doing customer intercepts or interviews, we need to factor in some of these human biases to get better outcomes. So we got to choose the right moment. We've got to understand some of the behavioral focuses. We've got to understand some of the subconscious drivers of those decisions so that we don't lean into it and get data that isn't great about this. The best is when we do the hybrid approach, when we're looking at both their body language and outcomes and physical cues, but we're also shaping the questions in a way that get good data out of them. Now, we know that these are all things that AI is not good at. AI is great at replication, at telling us what has happened before and getting those outcomes, but research is one of those areas where humans still have a demonstrable advantage, and that's because humans understand humans, and AI still, frankly, really struggles. I think it'll make progress over the next 5 or 10 years, but we're a long way away from it today. Yet another area into which AI struggles to help us within the marketing space. You also came across this study, which I love, that shows neuro forecasting. When we hook people up to EEG machines and are kind of watching them make decisions, it significantly outperforms asking people about the likelihood of a purchase decision. Why is that, James?
yeah, well, it's actually one of my favorite studies. They actually hooked these 2 groups of people up into fMRI machines, and they monitor them while they gave them $5 and said, "Here's a 10 Kickstarter, charity things that you choose which one that you like the best, give the $5 to it, and then we're going to monitor your brain while they do that." Now, 2 weeks later, these Kickstarter programs went live and they could actually monitor which one did the best. And they did pretty good. The participants did pretty good at picking which ones were going to be best. But what did even better was their nucleus accumbens. So the area of the brain involved with positive arousal, that actually did a better job. So this fMRI data did the best job of predicting which Kickstarter would really do the best in the real world scenario. So at some level, maybe it's because we're censoring ourselves, or maybe it's because we're second guessing ourselves, but whatever reason, our brain said that one's going to do really well, but then we chose something else instead. So yeah.
And there's a really good nugget there about kind of the underlying decision-making processes and understanding those that get at emotion rather than asking people. And this is part of the reason we've invested so heavily in a neuro lab where we can do EEG machines and heart rate monitoring and galvanic response and eye tracking, because it allows us to get at what people are genuinely thinking rather than asking them. Because again, sometimes we're blind to our own decision-making. We're blind to our own emotional processes. It's easy to describe them after the fact, but at the time they're occurring, sometimes we want to deny that they're occurring because it makes us feel less human, ironically. And thus, when we're asking people about information, we're asking people, hey, do you like this ad? Did you find this funny? Sometimes they don't even know, but they always feel a bias to telling us what we think we want to hear. So using these tools allow us to get at better research because we can watch how people are responding and thinking at a level they may not even be aware of. And this is why this level of technology is growing so fast and delivering such better outcomes. Now, interestingly, we do think AI will play a role in interpreting some of these research, right, James?
Exactly, because once again, AI excels at pattern recognition, and they're better than humans, way better than humans. I actually just saw a video the other day of a doctor. He says, I'm out of a job. He said, I've worked 20 years to be able to recognize this. AI came and did it in 3 seconds and did a better job than I could. It's just some pattern recognition. And he's not out of a job. People still want to hear it from the doctor, but yeah, no, we can't compete when it comes to pattern recognition with AI. So
So
yeah.
we'll be using AI tools to interpret a lot of the results, which means we'll be able to iterate a lot faster and get a lot more data, which is very exciting. Again, finding places where AI makes us individually more productive, but it's not really replacing the human in the equation. So
Yeah.
let's get to the upshot, of what generates better outcomes, because ultimately that is the question we all have as marketers. Again, there is some research around this topic. And what we see is that human-generated ads simply work better. People find that AI-generated ads lack tone, they're less memorable, they're less emotionally connective, and feel more generic. And this has been reproduced across a number of different studies in a number of different areas. Where we see the best outcomes, though, and this is the major takeaway, is when we combine human and AI. So you allow the human to deliver the understanding of humans, the insight, the emotionally driven connections and creative, and you allow the AI to do the optimization, the personalization, the mass customization that it particularly excels at. So the takeaway of all this for us as marketers is that rumors of our demise have been greatly exaggerated. How we do the work is going to change, but your expertise as marketers and really understanding how people think and what's going to affect that thinking, AI is not close to replacing us. We still need it for creativity. We will use AI to make us as individuals more productive. It will allow us to iterate faster. It will allow us to get information in front of a consumer that's more personalized and contains factual information at a level humans can't compete with. So the future is AI plus humans, not AI by itself. And we've already seen a couple of companies jump into the fray, allowing AI to produce ads, made some splashes, but then we quickly saw the effectiveness of those plummet after the novel piece wore off. So if you've enjoyed today's content, know that we put out a lot of psychology-driven content, both about AI, but just humans and generally, specifically in the marketing space. So feel free to follow us off of any of the social platforms at Intermark Group. Also, feel free to sign up for our newsletter. This QR code will get you there. Or if you have a question, please put it in the Q&A above or the chat feature, and we will take a few questions at the end of this. And if you have a question about your specific product, service, or company you would like to dig in on, send me an email. Love to chat about it. Love to give you some more information. We obviously nerd out quite a bit on psychology, and the folks who are fans thereof, we love to connect with. Now, with that said, let's get into some Q&A and see what people would like to chat about. So, Dr. James, first question we've gotten is, where do you start in understanding what a consumer walks into a situation thinking, like when they're going to enter into a category? How do you get at that psychological profile?
Oh, let's basic demographics first, but yeah, there's research showing that the best way to truly understand someone is empathy. Put yourselves in their shoes. Imagine, actually, not empathy. I misspoke. Sorry. They compared empathy versus perspective taking. That's proper. And so, really, what you want to do is look into what their previous day was, what their previous week was. There's a fascinating study done on Twitter, actually, just looking at the time of the week, people's attitudes change drastically on Monday versus Friday. And so, that's the baseline. I mean, it gets a lot more
Yeah.
detail from there, but yeah.
Yeah. And just psychographic profiling, I think, is a great
Mhm.
oversimplification. You know, everyone has demographic data off of their customer sets, of course. The gap is in taking that demographic data and breathing life into it with psychographic data. Like, what are they literally thinking? Some companies are pretty good at that. They talk to a lot of customers, they interview a lot of customers. Most companies rarely get past that psychographic data. And I hear a lot that, hey, I'm not sure we really understand our customers. So I think that's step one. And that can be done through first-party research. Like, hey, let's run some inexpensive online surveys. It can take it up a level. Let's do some customer intercepts and interview those folks in a structured way to get at information. But once you understand what they end the situation with, it's easier to affect that outcomes with marketing. So great question. Appreciate that. Got a question from Stephanie. She asked, what are our thoughts on the Coca-Cola ad? I was surprised at the backlash since they had the AI disclaimer and it was a fun, creative ad. Great question. And I think the way James laid out the research kind of gives us some insight into what that outcome was. And it lets us know people have um, a dislike for AI generated ads hard stop, specifically when they know it's AI generated. And so I think Coke was kind of caught in that middle layer. They're trying to do the ethical piece, which is to let people know it's an AI generated ad. And that notification by itself probably generated a lot of negative sentiment. And then aside from that, once we know something's AI generated, we start to find things to dislike within it.
Mhm.
There was another ad for one of the online prediction markets betting services that ran during the beginning of football season. It was entirely AI generated. It actually got positive publicity, but these were in the early days of that. People found it bizarre, but it was the bizarreness that I think people found compelling. They famously only spent a few $1,000s producing the ad. However, replication for that has gone poorly. As people have done other variations of it, there's been a strong dislike for that. I think we're seeing a novel piece in the early days, and once that novel wears off, we find that we just don't like it. So, great question.
Exactly. I like the way you point out it is novelty. That is huge. So breaking into the market with something like that, it can be very effective at first, but after that, we value the quality storytelling, the quality emotion, the things that make us feel stuff. I suspect we'll arrive at a place where AI is being used in everything, but it needs to be done so well and include those human psychology elements that it has a bigger impact. I think people will start to be okay with it then, but that's just me spitballing.
No, I think you're absolutely right. And as long as we have ads produced by AI that don't feel right, I think there's going to be a revulsion to it. I know everybody here is familiar with that concept, the uncanny valley, which is the notion that when we have images that look quite like human but aren't quite there, it creates a super creepiness factor. Like we're perfectly fine with cartoons, we're perfectly fine with photos of humans, but there's this close gap in the middle that makes us really uncomfortable and actually makes us have a feeling of revulsion. And I think we're probably feeling something like that with AI. Like we're perfectly fine if I know a human has generated this, and we're perfectly fine if it's obvious that an AI has generated this. Like, hey, based off of your purchase history, here's a recommendation. But it's that gap in the middle that I think we're most uncomfortable with. And really understanding that and avoiding it, I think, is the lesson here. So we've got to find ways to use AI to become more personally productive, to meet the needs of the consumer, mass personalization, customization in places where they're almost expecting it, but to not use it in some of those other places. Awesome. We had one other question about recommendations for AI marketing classes. We've got a few, including one of my friends, Bill Colazar, teaches at the University of Alabama, has a great course. Most universities now are offering courses in AI and AI-driven marketing. I tell you what, if you'll send me an email, I'll be happy to give you a list of some of the ones we have had some of our team attend. We try to stay on top of some of these things and happy to share those. With that, we are right at 40 minutes, and we like to keep things nice and tight. So we are going to call it a day. Again, go to intermarkgroup.com, sign up for our newsletter to get some more content, and send us your email questions. Would love to dig in on this topic or things related to it and show you how we can combine those two things to be increasingly effective. Dr. James, it feels like you're still going to have a key role in the future of marketing, and that makes me happy.
Oh, sounds good. Makes me happy too. Thanks, Jake. This is fun.
This is fun. Good to see everybody, and we will talk again soon. Thank you so much.